Hello everyone, my name is Wilken and in this video I will be discussing a study I conducted alongside Thomas Aichner and Paolo Coletti on the spillover effects of product harm crisis and the role of trust. Imagine you go to the supermarket to purchase some bananas. There are several options, each marked with different stickers stating their country of origin. One sticker specifies the bananas were imported from Costa Rica, others from Ecuador and the rest from the Philippines. You usually buy Costa Rican bananas, but suddenly you remember that there was recently a big scandal that resulted in a worldwide recall of their pineapple exports. Do you still purchase Costa Rican bananas, or do you reach for one of the other options instead? A product harm crisis, or PHC, is defined as a well-publicized incident where a company's products are found to be defective or dangerous and have the potential to bring harm to consumers. A PHC often leads to a damaged brand reputation and a decline in sales. They are one of the most common threats to a company. Previous research has focused on the direct effects to the brand that caused the PHC. However, negative consequences can often spill over to a company's entire brand portfolio. Researchers have generally studied these spillover effects through the Accessibility Diagnosticity Framework, also called the AD framework. Accessibility relates to objects being tied to one another in a network. Diagnosticity refers to how this can help shape a person's judgments and attitudes towards these objects. Our unique contribution to the literature considers a PHC in the context of products that benefit from positive associations relating to their country of origin. How does the AD framework relate? Well, in this case, the network consists of product categories that are connected through their country of origin. Different product categories benefit from positive consumer attitudes due to the fact that they come from a certain country. However, this also means that negative information could cause attitude deteriorations to spread throughout the network. Companies often leverage positive country of origin associations by using the phrase "made in" to communicate this positive trait. Now, it's unlikely for one company to influence an entire country's image. However, there are key industries within a country that play a crucial role in its development. For example, the German automotive industry or the Swiss watch industry. We suggest that the negative consequences of a PHC can be more far-reaching than previously thought. More specifically, when a key industry is involved in a PHC, it can generate negative spillover effects on the country image as a whole. Attitude deteriorations towards a certain category will translate to the product country image. Before we continue, it is important to specify that in this study we distinguish between the broad level and narrow level in spillover of attitude deteriorations. The broad category refers to a country's products in general, for example, Japanese products. In other words, those that are directly connected through the network. The narrow level refers to other product categories unrelated to the PHC, but of the same country of origin. For example, Japanese sneakers affected by a PHC involving Japanese electronics. These two, on the other hand, are in indirect connection through the network. Now, let's move on to more details about our study. We established 4 hypotheses, which I'll refer to as H1, H2, H3, and H4. This figure illustrates an overview of our research model and the corresponding hypotheses. As you can see, H1 is divided into 2 parts. H1A states that attitude deteriorations of the PHC-involved category increase attitude deteriorations towards the product country image. This means that there are spillover effects amongst direct connections within the network. On the other hand, H1B suggests that attitude deteriorations also extend into other product categories of the same country of origin, meaning those in indirect connection. H2 and H3 emerge as a consequence of these direct and indirect effects. H2 suggests that the effect specified in H1A is stronger than the spillover effect in H1B. This means that attitude deteriorations are expected to be stronger on the broad country of origin level versus the narrow country of origin level. H3 states that broad attitude deteriorations mediate the extent to which they spill over into other product categories from the same country of origin. In order to truly understand these negative effects, we must also understand the role of consumer trust. Studies show that, depending on the product category, consumers are more or less likely to trust brands originating from different parts of the world. For example, I am more likely to trust a Costa Rican coffee brand than a German one, because Costa Rica has a reputation for producing quality coffee. So when we talk about these country of origin effects, we can assume that levels of consumer trust in the country of origin, its companies and brands, are relatively high. Otherwise, these positive associations would not have emerged in the first place. Moving on, we examine trust using the AD framework. Now, one possibility is that when consumers trust brands, they may ignore negative brand information. This would imply a reduced diagnosticity, which implies weaker spillover effects to other objects in the network. On the other hand, we could argue that key national industries that contribute to a positive country image generate a halo effect. This means that positive associations are transferred to other product categories. If consumers associate various product categories with the same country of origin, it could result in high levels of trust. In this situation, erosion of trust in one brand could then amplify potential negative effects. Therefore, H4 states that trust in both the product country image and other product categories moderate the effects in H1A and H1B. This means that negative effects are greater when there is increased trust. However, it's important to note that the moderating effect of trust will vary depending on whether the company actively contributed to the PHC or it just happened to them. How did we test our hypotheses? Well, we conducted 2 online experiments using 2 realistic but fictitious PHCs. The PHCs occurred in the French wine and Japanese electronic industries. Study 1's scenario involved the intentional formation of a cartel, which was a highly diagnostic case. Study 2 referred to unintentional contamination of wine with bacteria, as well as unintentionally defective electronic parts. The diagnosticity in Study 2 was weaker than in Study 1. Now, let's examine Study 1 in more detail. 2 test groups of 325 American and British participants read a short article that described a scandal. Producers were found guilty of forming an illegal cartel to collude on selling prices. After reading the article, the respondents answered questions regarding their trust and attitudes on 3 levels. First, the PHC involved categories, which were French wine and Japanese electronics, then on the broad country of origin level, and finally on the narrow country of origin level, for example, French and Japanese sneakers. The survey then proceeded with a manipulation. Participants read 2 articles about recent events. The first article described the PHC and the second was about a neutral event. They were then asked to indicate their attitude towards French and Japanese products a second time. The procedure in Study 2 was identical to Study 1. However, the fictitious cases in Study 2 were modified to include both intentional and unintentional behavior on the part of the companies involved. Now, let's move on to a synthesis of the empirical results. Our results support the various hypotheses. In line with previous research, our studies found that a PHC can lead to consumer attitude deterioration of the product category. Additionally, these negative effects do in fact spill over to the country image and to other product categories in the same country of origin. Our study also provided some new insights. For example, negative effects appear stronger for the country image than for other product categories. These findings are relevant because if a product originates from a country with a less favorable image, consumers' willingness to pay or perceptions of quality may be lower. Additionally, we found that spillover effects vary depending on consumers' initial levels of trust. High levels of initial trust make the negative spillover more prominent. However, these effects are insignificant when there are relatively low levels of initial consumer trust. Finally, an important point is that the moderating role of trust is only relevant when consumers can clearly blame the companies causing the PHC. So, what are the managerial implications of our findings? Well, since we know that PHC can affect the made-in image, companies that rely on this label for marketing and communications may be negatively impacted. For this reason, it's advisable for companies not to rely entirely on country of origin for positioning or communication. Now, regarding trust, companies operating in key national industries have a big responsibility. Their actions may damage the nation's reputation as a place of production. This makes it even more important for these companies to be honest and act lawfully. Now, this is not as applicable when companies find themselves involved in a PHC for which they are not to blame. Finally, to mitigate potential negative effects from PHCs, companies should cultivate a unique brand image that does not rely on recognition or fame from its country of origin. If you would like to read the complete research paper, I've included the link in the description below. You can also access other research I've collaborated in through that same link. Thank you for watching.